beaten by a mere man. No. You've lost everything. No. I beat you. Lex Luthor!
All comic book fans know Lex Luthor. He needs no introduction. Second only to the Joker in terms of legendary villains in the DC Universe, Lex Luthor was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Since 1940, Lex Luthor has been Superman's main adversary. He formed the Legion of Doom, has defeated nearly every Justice League member, and is a brilliant, wealthy playboy philanthropist to match Bruce Wayne and Tony Stark, and has even served as president of a nation for 3 years, leading it successfully against an extraterrestrial invasion. Luthor has also attempted to weaken and destroy the Man of Steel over the years by using just about every evil device under the sun. With a vast and extensive comic book career, Lex Luthor is a villain beyond comparison, and thus here is everything you should know about him. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. How was the character first conceived? To the normal masses, Lex Luthor represents the American ideal, a rags-to-riches millionaire industrialist, a well-known philanthropist whose charities aid the underprivileged, and a genius whose research has produced several groundbreaking discoveries in a variety of fields. Those who are familiar with him describe him as an egotistical manipulator, and to those who know him well, he is a ruthless megalomaniac who is focused on ruling the world. But he wasn't always this way. As a character, Luthor has undergone many changes with regard to how he is seen and perceived. He was originally created to be just another Superman villain in 1940. However, he soon went on to become the singular most important enemy that Superman would continue to fight for years to come. The original thought process behind creating the character was to introduce to the universe a Superman enemy who did not have any special physical powers. Lex is not a demi-human or a god or even a mutant. He is simply a man with an incredibly high intellect. When Luthor first made his appearance in Action Comics number 23, published in the year 1940, he was less of an industrialist like the one we know and see today. Instead, he was more of a mad scientist, albeit one who appeared to be incredibly wealthy because he built not one but 2 cities for his own use. Over the years, there have been a few adjustments made to Luthor's origin story, generally to give the character more truth and, occasionally, to accommodate new canon history, such as his stay in Smallville during the formative years of Clark Kent. Perhaps the most well-known illustration of the lawful evil archetype is Lex Luthor. As opposed to other villains like the Joker or Doomsday, Luthor solely employs violence and disorder as a means to an end. He would kill anyone who stood in the way of his plans without hesitation, but most of the time this is done out of necessity rather than out of hate. The connection between Lex Luthor and Superman is further a fantastic example of how the most intriguing villains are often a sinister reflection of the hero. Beyond the philosophizing and posturing, Luthor despises Superman because, as he is aware, the superhero is everything that Lex is not. He resents Superman, of course, but he is also jealous of him. Lex devotes all of his great talents and assets to a single objective, the gaining of power and influence, as he has nothing resembling a private life or other pursuits. Not because he has a certain end goal in mind, but rather because he's without anything else that could bring him even at the tiniest bit of happiness, comfort, or meaning in his life. He is shown as being both nihilistic and essentialist. Even Luthor's ferocious and fanatical rivalry with Superman is motivated, at least in part, by his determination to face and destroy this self-styled savior of humanity and allow human hands to once again direct the course of history. Many people will always remember Luthor as the man who had the power to save the world but chose not to. Epicurus believed that would make him capable but unmotivated, and thus evil. And we could go as far as to say that this description suits him perfectly. Hence, not only did a lot of thought go into the creation of this character, but equal efforts as well for developing the character with added complexity and credible depths, so that he would be a relatable villain. It is obvious that the villains that have the most emotional and intellectual depth are often the ones that are admired by fans, and Lex Luthor is no exception. Lex Luthor becoming the Superman nemesis. Lex Luthor has had many different origin stories over the years. Over time, there have been a few adjustments made to Luthor's origin story, generally to give the character more complexity, keep up with the times, and occasionally to accommodate new canon history, such as his stay in Smallville during the formative years of Clark Kent. Let's start from the beginning. 1940, Action Comics number 23. When Luthor initially appeared in 1940 in Action Comics, he was depicted as having a full head of bright red hair. However, in 1941, due to an artist's error in the Superman comic strip, Luthor started to be portrayed as being completely bald. In any case, Shuster preferred to depict bald villains, so with Siegel's consent, the more menacing look was embraced and became a Luthor hallmark. During this time, not much was known about him. His nationality was uncertain and his origins were unknown. He was first referred to by just his German surname, Luthor. This comic issue also shows that he does not live on Earth. He actually lives in a giant city in the air, kept afloat by a gigantic blimp. He attempted to undermine a European peace summit using his scientific brilliance, but Superman stopped him. Luthor discovered his weakness but was ultimately unable to kill Superman. The first Luthor was one of a number of pulp-inspired eccentric scientists who planned to rule the world or obliterate it through different evil plots. He occasionally wore a mask, but generally he desired to be seen as his grand schemes came to pass, until he was repeatedly thwarted by the Man of Steel. 1960, Adventure Comics 272. In 1960, it was revealed that Luthor had been buddies with Superboy in his childhood, but subsequently held him responsible for a lab mishap that caused him to lose his hair. Luthor turned into a criminal in his quest for retribution against the hero. Over time, he became Superman's fiercest adversary and the antithesis of all the hero stood for. Even if his plans to rule the world were constantly foiled, he always found a way to escape and remain a threat to the world. The red-haired Luthor was claimed to be the bald Luthor's equivalent from some other dimension, specifically Earth 2, when the DC multiverse first gained traction in the 1960s. The Silver Age origin of Lex Luthor was retrospectively recounted in Adventure Comics 271 in 1960, authored by Jerry Siegel. It is here that Luthor finally received a first name, Lex. The story between the two panned out in this manner. Lex was a young scientist living in Smallville, and Superman was, well, Superboy, since he was not a man yet. It was disclosed that Lex became a big Superboy fan after his family relocated to Smallville when he was a child. The story begins with a kryptonite meteor landing on Earth next to Superboy, weakening him. However, Lex came to his rescue and used the bulldozer to push the meteor into quicksand, saving the day. Superboy was grateful and indebted to him, thanking him for saving his life. He then gifted him chemicals and materials for Lex to experiment on in his fully equipped laboratory out of appreciation and to support his scientific endeavors. Lex started an experiment there to develop a treatment for kryptonite poisoning as well as an artificial new form of life. The two shared a strong friendship, with Lex even keeping Superboy's pictures and various other memorabilia in his lab. However, one day, Superboy accidentally caused his super breath to put out the flames when a fire broke out in his laboratory. The toxins that were released during this rescue attempt ruined both the artificial life form and the kryptonite cure Lex was working on, and they also caused Luthor to suddenly go bald. Luthor blamed Superboy's behavior on jealousy and promised retaliation. First, he made extravagant technical breakthroughs to better the lives of Smallville's citizens in an effort to discredit Superboy. But each time they got out of hand and needed Superboy's help to make things right. Lex refused to be held accountable for these tragedies, reasoning that Superboy was trying to make him look bad. He made a lifelong commitment to prove to the world that he was Superboy's and later Superman's superior by killing the hero. This origin gave Luthor a layer of complexity beyond his prior mad scientist persona and suggested that if things had gone differently, Luthor might have been a more honorable person. These components were played up in numerous stories in the 1970s and 1980s, especially in Elliot S. Magin's text novel Last Son of Krypton. This origin gave Luthor's battle with Superman a personal aspect for the first time. In the Silver Age, Luthor was also regarded as a hero in the extraterrestrial world of Lexor, where he used his technical brilliance to resurrect the planet's technology and reconstruct civilization for the locals, despite his reputation as a notorious villain and a maestro of evil on Earth. He also married and had a kid while staying on the planet Lexor, but both of them sadly perished as a result of Luthor's obsession with Superman.
I can't think of a morning
Modern take, miniseries Man of Steel. Lex Luthor was completely rewritten in 1986 as part of John Byrne's reboot of the Superman mythos in the miniseries The Man of Steel, with the goal of making him a villain familiar to 1980s viewers, a corporate white-collar criminal. He later developed into a criminal genius under the direction of other writers, ever present but never truly vanquished. Luthor is frequently more cunning and sneaky than previous villains Superman has confronted, working primarily behind the scenes. In general, Luthor tries to keep a clean appearance and avoid getting his hands filthy, but there have been certain exceptions. Luthor was born in Metropolis's Suicide Slum neighborhood. Alexander Joseph Lex Luthor was raised by a gruff and irritable father who mistreated his mother and disregarded his hopes for a better life. Perry White, a classmate who supported Lex's ambitions to leave the slums and achieve success, was his only companion. Lex's neighborhood during his adolescence helped him develop a cunning skill for manipulation. It was here that, without his parents' consent, Lex took out a sizable insurance policy on them, damaged their brakes and killed them for the money. Lex was placed in a foster family and he decided to simply wait until he was old enough to receive the insurance money. It didn't take Lex long to realize that his foster parents were far crueler than his birth ones. They planned to locate Lex's money and take it from him. They were selfish and cunning. Lex discreetly deposited his money in a savings account soon after reaching the legal age at which he could obtain it, with a clear intention that only he would be permitted to make withdrawals. Lex's foster father approached his daughter Lena and ordered that she charm Lex into swindling the money after discovering the bank records Lex had concealed from them. Lena, who also had a soft spot for Lex, declined, and as a punishment her father battered her to death. At the time, Lex was away from the house because his friend Perry had persuaded him to attend a football game. Lex was devastated to discover Lena dead, killed by her father when he got home. Lex Luthor's life would change as a result of this incident, and he determined to do whatever it would take to become powerful and possess total control over his environment. It is mainly in this retelling that Luthor thus exhibits all of the traits we have come to identify with a legendary industrialist even at a young age. Lex soon set out to establish himself using charm and trickery where possible, but not shying away from employing brutality and coercion through the employment of hired goons when necessary. He was intelligent, personable, ambitious, and cunning. Further changes. According to the most recent account of Luthor's history, he was raised affluently in Metropolis as the son of a powerful but nonetheless abusive industrialist. This alteration greatly diminishes Lex's reputation as a self-made businessman who rose from humble beginnings and did everything it took to succeed in life, at least in the eyes of many fans. Part of what makes Luthor different from Superman, and one of the reasons for Lex's enduring distaste for him, is that he comes from poor beginnings. Superman's success was something he inherited. Kal-El just had the good fortune to land on a planet whose extraterrestrial abilities are perceived as being nearly divine by the locals. Whereas Luthor toiled his way out of poverty. There have been various versions of Lex over the years, and it would be easy to dedicate an entire video to his various origin stories, but these ones are the most iconic. In fact, all of these show Lex's trajectory as a character over the years, and one can see how this iconic villain took shape over the last 80 years.
I know evil!
Lex Luthor was the mainstay amongst DC comic book villains. He has been part and parcel of almost all comics that have ever featured Superman, so this section is definitely going to be long. Settle in with a bowl of popcorn because Luthor got up to a whole host of evil schemes in the 8 years that he has graced the pages of DC Comics as a badass villain. The Golden Age. As we already know, in the Golden Age, Lex Luthor was a mad scientist and businessman, modelled on the likes of Donald Trump. He was a regular villain with his predictable schemes and machinations against Superman. Silver Age. It is the Silver Age that gave us the classic Lex Luthor trait of being obsessed with killing Superman and dominating the Earth. It cemented the bold and cunning industrialist as easily the most powerful and resilient villain Superman has ever had to face. However, it was in the Bronze Age that Luthor became super interesting and complex. The Bronze Age. Fans will know that in the Bronze Age, Lex decided to retire from public life and villainy. putting his hatred for Superman behind him. He does so and goes to live in Luxor, a planet where he was worshipped as a god. However, peace was not in his cards, since soon after, Superman came looking for him. It turns out that one of Lex's devices was still active on Earth and could possibly pose a threat to mankind. Superman wanted Lex to return to Earth and dismantle the device. Lex, however, did not want to have anything to do with Earth and refused to return, causing a fight to break out between the two. It is here that he first dons his iconic green and purple warsuit. The two well-matched foes battled each other in what seemed to be an epic showdown. However, Lex's uncontrolled rage caused the destruction of the entire planet of Luxor. Unfortunately, along with the people of Luxor, his wife and son also perished in the tragic event. Seeing his beloved planet and family blow up in front of his eyes, Lex blamed Superman for this incredible loss. He believed that if Superman had never come to get him, none of this would have ever happened. It is also here that Lex vowed to come for Superman and all that Man of Steel held dear, a truly chilling moment for all those who have read this comic book. Crisis on Infinite Earth's storyline. The iconic Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline also features Luthor in all his cunning glory. This storyline sees Lex Luthor team up with another famous Superman villain, Brainiac. The two of them have immense intellect in common, so it was only a matter of time before the two joined forces. They had teamed up to try and defeat Superman before this storyline, and they would go on to team up in the future. However, this one is easily one of their best pairings so far. The two of them put their heads and resources together and recruited villains from all over the DC universe. Their plan was to use the confusion that was caused by the crisis to their advantage and overthrow the heroes. However, the circumstances were such that they had to join forces with the rest of the DC heroes to keep the universe from getting destroyed. After all, if the universe collapsed, where and how would they carry out their acts of villainy? Modern age. After the Crisis on Infinite Earth's storyline, Lex had his origin story revamped to make it more of a rags-to-riches take on the criminal industrialists. During this time in the 90s, Lex was immensely popular, and a twisted and tragic backstory only added to the fans' fascination with him. It is also in the modern age that he has had some of his most memorable and popular storylines. It was also during this time that he created three iconic Superman villains, namely Parasite, Bizarro, and Metallo. President of the United States. Probably one of Lex's craziest yet most iconic storylines, President of the United States, is one worthy of mention. Now that billionaire tycoons with questionable morals have taken the helm in various countries, the idea doesn't seem too far-fetched. But when it was written, people absolutely could not get enough of this narrative. In 2000, Lex was elected President of the United States after running on a platform of advancing technology. Despite Luthor's less admirable qualities, he benefited from the previous administration's great unpopularity as a result of how it handled the catastrophe resulting from the Gotham City earthquake. Ironically, Batman would discover that Luthor was solely to blame for the botched reconstruction of the entire Gotham City, which led Bruce Wayne to terminate all military contract ties with the US government and his corporation Wayne Enterprises in opposition to Luthor's election to the post of the president. As a retaliation, Luthor murdered Wayne's lover Vesper Fairchild and blamed Bruce Wayne for doing it. The Our Worlds at War crisis, in which he organized the US Army, Earth's superheroes, and a number of dubious alien armies to combat the plot's villain, Imperiex, was an early success of his political career. But, as it would eventually become clear, Lex was aware of the alien invasion beforehand and did nothing to warn Earth's heroes. When Lois revealed evidence of President Luthor's failure to give advance notice, which caused Kansas to be set ablaze, Clark Kent was blamed for her actions. Superman and Batman were able to get proof from Lex Luthor that he had swapped weapons with Darkseid on Apocalypse, giving them the monster Doomsday in exchange for his assistance during the Our Worlds at War crisis via a deranged confession made during the conflict and captured on tape. Further, when it was discovered that Talia Head, Lex Corp's acting CEO, had sold all of the company's assets to the Wayne Foundation, it was the final straw for him. He stepped down from the presidency and went underground after having served the American people for about 3 years. Infinite Crisis. In Infinite Crisis, Connor Kent, the current Superboy, had a mind-control software implanted in his brain. Since he was composed of 50% Lex Luthor DNA and 50% Superman DNA, Lex Luthor planned to use it to exact revenge on Earth's most powerful heroes while in hiding. This storyline is also famous for the introduction of Alexander Luthor Jr., along with other people who survived the crisis on Infinite Earths. Alexander Luthor Jr., the son of Earth 3's Lex Luthor, came to the DC universe as part of a plot to build a perfect Earth under the premise of rebuilding Earth 2. In order to accomplish this, he adopted Lex Luthor's persona and found a brand new secret society of supervillains. Lex then created the Secret Six. The goal of the Villainous Secret Six, which was established by the real Lex Luthor under the assumed identity of Mockingbird, was to undermine the new secret society that Alexander had founded. Lex vowed retaliation against the imposter. This story ended with Alexander dying. After being exonerated of more than 120 criminal charges, ranging from misbehavior to first-degree murder, 1 year after the occurrences of the Infinite Crisis, Luthor discovers that the people no longer approve of him. He is also being brought out of LexCorp thanks to Dr. Sivana's schemes. He accuses Clark Kent of publishing stories that expose his machinations, and after an enraged mob heckles him on the courthouse steps, he swears vengeance on Metropolis. New 52. In the New 52, Lex Luthor is paid by the government to kill Superman following the events of Flashpoint. Hence, here he is essentially a hired government agent. There is also a LexCorp existing in the New 52 as well. Lex is employed by General Sam Lane to apprehend young Superman. He uses a train to set up a trap for Superman. Superman is knocked out as he only just manages to stop it. He is picked up by Lex, who then subjects him to numerous tests and experiments. Later, it is discovered that Lex Luthor made contact with the Collector using an unidentified method. One of his coolest story arcs from the New 52 is the Forever Evil storyline. Forever Evil. In the Forever Evil storyline, in order to fight the crime syndicate, Luthor eventually teams up with other villains like Captain Cold, Black Manta, and Black Adam. This narrative also sees him being the creator of another iconic Superman villain, Bizarro. In fact, this narrative paints Lex in an extremely positive light as he acts as a father figure to Bizarro, helps save Dick Grayson, and even fights a returned Alexander Luthor side by side with the DC heroes. Alexander ends up killing Bizarro, and in a surprising display of affection, Lex actually feels bad about losing his creation. He then exacts revenge by destroying Alexander himself. Luthor also succeeds in saving Superman's life after the crime syndicate is vanquished by extracting the kryptonite fragment Atomica placed in his brain. To the dismay of Superman, Luthor even succeeds in securing a position in the Justice League, constructs a new watchtower for them, and adds Shazam and Captain Cold to the team. Luthor even manages to discover Bruce Wayne's secret identity as Batman by learning of his relationship with Dick Grayson. DC Rebirth. In a twist of events following the passing of the New 52 Superman, Luthor makes a formal announcement that he would assume the role of the Man of Steel. He donned a superhero outfit, quite similar to that of Superman, and appointed himself the savior and protector of Metropolis. Interestingly, during this announcement, the pre-Flashpoint Superman interrupted him and said that he was exactly like his Luthor. However, Luthor too was happy probably, for once, not to be in the shadow of Superman. It was his moment of glory, and for him to be the hero that the public depended upon. However, this little charade does not last for long as the pre-New 52 Superman shows up and spells the end for Luthor's career as Metropolis's hero. In fact, maybe letting him be a hero and protector would have stopped Lex from indulging in evil activities. But well, Superman knows best, eh? Justice League by Scott Snyder. He plays a major and pivotal role in Scott Snyder's Justice League as he creates the Deadly Legion of Doom. Lex Luthor established the group, and the founding members were Black Manta, Cheetah, Gorilla Grodd, Joker, and Sinestro. The team is based out of a moving headquarters known as the Hall of Doom. In order to explain to his new squad why he chose them to form the Legion, Lex brought them all together. He explained that he had discovered the actual essence of men as well as the multiverse itself, a nature capable of bringing the multiverse to its doom. He reveals that although humans were meant to be the most formidable race in the multiverse and the lords of all creation, they were kept out of everything. However, he now understood that the totality, a fragment of the source wall that was heading towards the Earth after the wall's own destruction, held the key to doom, and that it would soon fall on the globe. Lex chose the Legion because they were the ideal group to utilize to harness the 7 forces required to release this powerful artifact. What followed was an intense and long-drawn war between the Justice League and the Legion of Doom. Lex Luthor has been in way too many comic book storylines that can be counted by one single-handedly. It is easy to see why writers keep incorporating him and updating him to keep up with the times. He is a villain that is far too good to kill away. In fact, his rather meta and philosophical motivations make him a terribly interesting character. While these are not all of the titles and narratives he has appeared in, these are some of the best ones. Which one is your favorite Lex Luthor storyline?
You'd also better remember what happened to poor Goldface.
He has been featured in almost every major DC animated series. Lex Luthor, a villain so immensely popular that it comes as no surprise that he was featured in almost every major DC animated series ever to be shown on TV, starting with early animation such as Filmation's New Adventures of Superman, which featured Lex Luthor for the first time on television. Over the course of the show's 3 seasons, Lex Luthor made an appearance in 10 different episodes, including Can a Luthor Change His Spots?, Luthor's Lethal Laser, and Merlin's Magic Marbles. He was voiced by Ray Owens and referred to as the world's finest criminal scientist in the majority of his appearances. From the middle of the 1970s through the middle of the 1980s, Hanna-Barbera's Super Friends series included Lex Luthor as a frequent antagonist. Stan Jones provided his voice for him. Lex Luthor is the one comic book antagonist out of all that were featured who had appeared in the maximum number of episodes of the series. For the very first time in television media, Lex Luthor, voiced by Michael Bell, was depicted in the short-lived 1988 animated series created by Ruby Spears Enterprises as a shady businessman who uses excuses to conceal his criminal operations. He was also shown wearing a kryptonite ring that prevented Superman from approaching him. His key appearances, however, are those in the DC animated universe. Although nothing much is known about Lex Luthor's past, he was a remarkable example of a self-made man in the DC animated series. Luthor amassed a considerable fortune and established Lex Corp with the help of his inherent brilliance and general lack of morality. Lex Corp swiftly grew to be one of the biggest companies in the United States because of a blend of Luthor's cutthroat business strategies and creative flair. The fact that Luthor was now undeniably the most influential person in Metropolis led to him trying to present himself as the leader of the community by making millions of dollars in charitable contributions and establishing libraries, schools, and hospitals in his honor. But at his core, Luthor was ruthless, cunning, and conniving. He envisioned Metropolis as a kingdom, with Luthor as its unquestionable emperor. In order to give the selfish Luthor more and more influence and fortune, Lex Corp imposed absolute monopolies on public works, technology, transportation, and even emerged as a significant defense contractor. His hunger for power was ultimately what turned him into Superman's worst nemesis. Luthor was immediately troubled by the notion of an extraterrestrial with immense power who looked to be a human. That understandable mistrust, nevertheless, gradually turned into personal jealousy and malice. Luthor was even more enraged by the fact that he was powerless to recruit or bribe the newcomer or change how the general public viewed Superman's deeds. Soon, Luthor would regularly plan his attacks on Superman, making numerous attempts to damage his reputation or completely eliminate him. His desire to get rid of Superman became so intense that he was even willing to pay psychotic villains like the Joker to murder him. Even though the attempts frequently cast Luthor in a negative light, he was able to hide his tracks enough times to avoid being charged. When Lex Luthor first appeared in Superman, the animated series, he was portrayed as a crooked industrialist who rules Metropolis. Mercy Graves is shown with him as his devoted bodyguard. Even in his brief partnerships with villains like Bizarro, Metallo, Brainiac, and the Joker, Luthor was always finally defeated. As a result, he never faces criminal charges because of lack of proof, and he remains out of jail for the duration of the series. Luthor is eventually unmasked as a crook and loses his financial empire during his appearance in the animated series Justice League. His persona leans more in the direction of the criminal mastermind consumed with eliminating Superman that was originally envisioned. Early in the narrative, Batman, Green Lantern, and the Martian Manhunter finally bring to light his illegal acts and amass enough proof to establish his guilt. He also discovers that he has a rare but fatal blood cancer brought on by decades of exposure to a chunk of kryptonite he brought around with him. He offers the Ultra-Humanite a bribe to get out of jail, and the two team up together to become the first edition of the Injustice Gang, which also includes Shape, Copperhead, Star Sapphire, Cheetah, Solomon Grundy, and even the Joker. He then appears in the series Justice League Unlimited. In this storyline, Lex plays a key part in the narrative and takes on the role of the series' main antagonist. Lex is still vying for the presidency of the United States in the first season, and he also provides financial support to a covert government agency whose goal is to destroy the Justice League if they ever turn against the people of Earth. It is also in this season that he famously merges with Brainiac, creating the most intelligent being in the universe. After Brainiac is persuaded by Luthor to combine alien nanotechnology, Brainiac is given a new mission: to consume all knowledge in the universe and then recreate it in his likeness, as opposed to destroying it. However, the Flash defeats the newly united state in the series' first and only use of the Speed Force. In the last season, Luthor frequently communicates with a hallucination of Brainiac, giving him a type of multiple personality disorder. Rebuilding Brainiac and reclaiming his loss to godhood are Luthor's two main obsessions. It is never clearly stated if the hallucination is genuinely Brainiac or is only a fiction of Lex's imagination. At the end of the series, with Metron's assistance, Luthor is able to obtain the anti-life equation that Darkseid has been seeking for a very long time, and uses it on him to irreversibly absorb both of them into the source wall. Thus, it is evident that Lex Luthor has played a major role in the DC animated universe, single-handedly creating a lot of trouble for the Man of Steel and the Justice League. His screen presence is also impeccable as his persona shines, albeit in a negative light. However, that is exactly what makes Lex such a convincing villain. Some of his important roles in movies. Lex Luthor has been an integral part of the DC cinematic universe. Worth mentioning here are his most recent adaptations and appearances on the big screen. He appeared in Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, played by Jesse Eisenberg. In order to modernize the persona, Alexander Luthor Jr. is depicted as a millennial tech mogul instead of an industrialist, as he is in the comics. He is an erratic genius with monotheistic, sociopathic inclinations and psychopathic impulses. Luthor transfers such animosity onto Superman and expresses scorn for the public's interest in him as a result of his maltreatment at the hands of his deceased father, who frequently projected him in public as a beneficent person, as well as never having been saved by a man in the sky. In an effort to persuade Senator June Finch to use deterrence against Superman, Luthor goes so far as to excavate kryptonite from Zod's unsuccessful terraforming experiment. He also accuses Superman of being responsible for killings in Africa and the bombings of the US Capitol. In order to make Batman mistrust Superman, Luthor uses several tactics throughout the movie, including letting Batman take Superman's kryptonite to use against him. In the movie Justice League, Jesse Eisenberg returns to play the character of Lex Luthor. He was supposed to play a part in the central story, but he only shows up in the post-credits sequence, where it is revealed that he used money from his offshore accounts to break out of jail and board a luxurious private yacht with some female bodyguards. After learning of Superman's revival, he teams up with Deathstroke to discuss creating their own group to compete with the recently founded Justice League. With his original character reinstated, Eisenberg once again returned in Zack Snyder's Justice League Director's Cut from 2021. He is shown to have fled Arkham Asylum in the post-credits sequence, working with Slade Wilson, to whom he reveals Batman's true identity as Bruce Wayne in return for his assistance. As far as other prominent depictions go, Gene Hackman portrayed Lex Luthor in Superman the movie from 1978 and two of its three sequels, Superman 2 and Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. The portrayal by Hackman differs significantly from the versions in comic books. Luthor is featured in the movies as Superman's comic adversary. Luthor's primary area of commercial interest in the majority of these movies is real estate investment. Kevin Spacey portrayed Lex Luthor in the 2006 movie Superman Returns. Despite maintaining a sense of humor, this portrayal of the role is drier clearer and more direct than Hackman's, and it stands out for showing greater hate and contempt for Superman. In the movie, Lex Luthor has been released from prison and is determined to exact revenge on Superman. Luthor defrauds an elderly, affluent doctor to pay for his criminal enterprises. Like in the first two movies, real estate is a major theme in Luthor's schemes, this time as well.
I can't.
How was the evil genius scientist as an enemy? The only thing Lex Luthor enjoys more than being recognized as a leader of men is for lesser beings to adore him for his intelligence and achievement. Lex's egocentric opinion of himself dwarfs his enormous respectable successes. He considers himself to be the epitome of the modern Renaissance man and the pinnacle of human potential. His goals nearly invariably undermine the faith and trust of his supporters and followers, and they frequently result in miserable failure, despite having the charm of a natural leader and the knowledge to capitalize on this characteristic. It is well known that Luthor hates failure more than nearly anything else in the world because he bases everything on success and superiority. In fact, after Lex's psyche combined with Brainiac's, his ambition to rise to a higher form of existence grew to unfathomable heights. Lex spent months trying to recreate and revive Brainiac using any methods necessary, all the while plagued by the temptation of almost godlike power and knowledge. Luthor seldom forgets an insult, despite his excellent patience and self-control in most situations. When enraged, Luthor's anger is irrepressible and won't go away until it has been fully satisfied by victory or retaliation. The fact that Superman's existence, in Lex's opinion, threatens his place in life is what ultimately leads to his downfall because of his extremely hot temper. Superman was born with powers much beyond the abilities of ordinary men like Lex, and he eclipsed Luthor as Metropolis's favorite son from the day of his debut public appearance. This rivalry was, and still is, a major source of fuel for Luthor's genuine villainy. If Luthor hadn't taken action because he was jealous of Superman, he might only have been a very successful industry leader. However, Luthor became one of the deadliest villains in history as a result of his careless attempts to eliminate Superman and later also the Justice League. In more recent iterations and origin stories, he has been shown to be much darker. Luthor exhibits all of the traits we have come to connect with the legendary businessman even at a young age. Lex began working to establish himself, using charm and trickery where possible, but not shying away from employing intimidation and violence through the employment of hired goons when necessary. He was intelligent, personable, ambitious, and cunning. This angry and opportunistic disposition comes to a head in one version of his origin story, where Luthor, who had seemingly engineered his parents' demise by destroying their car, went on to start LexCorp with the proceeds from a sizable life insurance policy he had bought in their names. Quite the disturbing backstory. Hence, being his enemy was both unpleasant and dangerous. A feeling that Superman will definitely testify to. Despite all of his flaws, Luthor had some moral principles. He will support Superman and the Justice League in their fights against more formidable adversaries like Justice Lords and Darkseid, given the circumstances. It is repeatedly demonstrated that, despite their animosity, Luthor and Superman have respect for one another. This is demonstrated when Luthor conveys regret over the supposed death of Superman and goes to his funeral. He further also embraces a sobbing Lois Lane and confesses to her that he himself will miss Superman. It is also demonstrated when Superman offers to aid Luthor in any way he can after getting to know that his adversary has cancer. In fact, it seems that Luthor's personal animosity towards Superman has, in some ways, taken the place of his genuine purpose in life. Additionally, he stated that even though he harbored a deep animosity towards the Man of Steel, even he would not risk world peace and the safety of the general public in an effort to avenge him.
You come to this planet.
What makes him an invincible enemy of even the strongest superhero? Lex Luthor lacks any metahuman talents and is physically equivalent to any regular adult human. But for almost the entirety of his publication history, he has been portrayed as one of the most intelligent humans in the world and the most intelligent person in the DC universe. He has an eidetic memory and is an expert in almost every branch of research, including mutations, time travel, robotics, holography, spectrum analysis, biochemistry, synthetic polymers, computers, communications, and extra-dimensional travel. Luthor does not consider any other entity to be his intellectual equal, with the exception of the alien being known as Brainiac, and sometimes Batman. Though there is little proof to suggest that his enhanced intelligence continued after he and Brainiac were once again split apart, it is speculated that he may have an even higher IQ as a result of occurrences that saw his consciousness briefly merge with Brainiac. His extraordinary intellectual abilities serve as his superpowers, enabling him to create cutting-edge weaponry and equipment, outwit opponents who are much stronger and more powerful than he is, and persuade people to do what he wants. As one of the richest individuals in the world and as President of the United States, his brilliance also extends to both politics and the business. He frequently serves as the head of the supervillain organizations he has been affiliated with. In addition, Luthor has received training in hand-to-hand combat, particularly karate. Additionally, he has on occasion received training from Themyscire's Amazons. In order to carry out his goals or eliminate his opponents, Lex Luthor has developed a variety of incredibly sophisticated weaponry, machines, and robots over the years. He frequently produces synthetic kryptonite and frequently employs kryptonite weaponry that may harm Superman and other Kryptonians. Lex has also spent a lot of time and money over the years working to improve his physical attributes, both through genetic engineering and the creation of an armored battlesuit. Thanks in large part to the warsuit's arsenal of kryptonite-based weapons, Luthor poses a real threat to Superman in his warsuit. An earlier period in the history of the planet Lexor, when technology was highly developed, produced the first warsuit, which was used first in 1983. It is extremely durable, and Superman can strike it multiple times before it is damaged due to its Lexorian components, and its force field adds even more resilience. While not as strong as Superman, wearing it gives Lex enormous superhuman strength that allows him to defeat many of Earth's heroes. It also causes Superman's powers to deteriorate with time because of the suit's ability to fire strong energy blasts and a molecular coating that can stop his body from collecting energy from solar radiation. The suit can also project red solar beams to directly harm Superman because it is powered by red solar technology. A hypnotism weapon, sophisticated sensor systems, and illusion casting technologies are among the other elements of the suit. With technology from Apocalypse, the warsuit introduced in 2004 provides increased superhuman strength and pain resistance, a strong force field, flight, electrical weapons, and a wide range of kryptonite-based weaponry like energy cannons, axes, and a collapsible sword. It is also equipped with electrical armaments. Luthor could fly non-stop for several days thanks to its immense power and different kinds of kryptonite stones that are also kept in the gauntlets. In post-crisis storylines, Luthor was known for also frequently donning a kryptonite ring on his right hand. However, he gave up this strategy after repeated exposure to its radiation caused cancer, necessitating the transplant of his brain into a cloned body to survive. Last but not least, with regard to nuclear energy in general and atomic explosions in particular, Lex Luthor had quite a troubled past. When nuclear energy first appeared in 1940, it didn't take long for it to gain some traction. Luthor quickly established himself as the first comic book character to ever employ an atomic weapon. Due to the security surrounding the Manhattan Project, the War Department postponed the release of this plot until 1946, despite the fact that it was written in 1944. Now, even after several years, Luthor is still employing lethal technology. He once set off a series of nuclear explosions, yet managed to live, showing that he truly is invincible. You can foil his plans, but you will never be able to get rid of him for good. Lex Luthor deserves a solo project. Frequently, villains enjoy much greater popularity than the heroes they oppose. Maybe it is their absence of ethical restraint, the astounding range of their tactics and motivations, or even the reality that they virtually always seem better than their adversaries. Exploring Lex Luthor, his background, and the reasons behind his desire to defeat the Man of Steel would be a positive step in the right way, given how popular villain origin stories are right now. All great superheroes have iconic villains. Batman has the Joker, and Spider-Man has Venom, to name a few. However, a recurring problem with Superman is that he is just too powerful. He is often likened to a god, so failure is simply not expected from him. This makes all of the villains created to oppose him fall flat. It is pretty much like Superman has no weaknesses at all, and the audiences over the years have made it amply clear that there is simply no fun in watching a movie knowing that Superman is going to swoop in, save the day, and defeat all the bad guys. This is where Lex comes in. Lex Luthor is an interesting villain in Superman's rogues gallery simply because he doesn't aim to fight Superman using brute strength. He uses his brain and instead hopes to defeat the Man of Steel by outthinking him. This potentially could make for an extremely interesting narrative, since Luthor is considered to be the smartest man in DC, having the edge over the godlike hero. Further, the modern interpretation of Lex Luthor is both an extremely socially relevant persona and a fascinating individual, a titan of business and ethically corrupt billionaire. Lex Luthor uses his incredible wealth and intellectual powers to pursue fame and glory. Modern-day Lex Luthor portrayals are frequently fixated on eliminating Superman, in addition to just opposing or provoking him. Luthor views the Man of Steel with a mixture of intellectual mistrust and envy, which is frequently influenced by his childhood adoration of him and adult conflicts with him. No matter how many nice deeds an alien performs, Luthor contends that humanity should not adore him. The fate of mankind has to be in the hands of men. He has little desire to assist people. Instead, his ultimate objective is almost always to usurp Superman's position of popularity and popular adulation. He is a brilliant but egotistical villain who is consumed with himself. He is also a highly fascinating villain whose particular situation is better suited for grounded authenticity than any other. Although Lex Luthor has appeared in movies quite frequently, he has never been the subject of a standalone film. Grim, compelling, menacing, and troublingly believable describe Luthor's narrative. In today's world, anyone can easily picture Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, or even Mark Zuckerberg becoming strangely infatuated with Superman and spending billions of dollars trying to unseat him in a world where he actually exists. One of the smartest DC initiatives of the franchise thus far may be Lex Luthor's own project. Lex Luthor embodies a complicated and dark villain, a combination that fans seem to adore. Further, DC is also known for its awesome lineup of supervillains, so it makes sense that Luthor is one of them. His story makes him a believable villain, and that is exactly what has struck a chord with fans over the years. It would be amazing to see Lex get more traction, since he is quite possibly the only Superman villain that could outsmart the Man of Steel. What do you think about Lex Luthor? Tell us in the comment section below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.
Sanctimonious image of yours fooled everyone except me.